Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. I'm Heather Scott, District 2, and today before you is RS 32167. And what this legislation will do is it will correct a big issue that we've uncovered last week in this week in JFAC. We do not want shuffling around of money to cover up overspending in a budget. So what this bill will do is to close a loophole. So budgets will stay within budgets and not be covered up. So with that, I'd ask for introduction.
Thank you. Representative Tanner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for a motion.
Motion's in order.
I move to introduce RS 32167.
Very good. Representative Birch.
Thank you for a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the statement of purpose here says this is specific to the governor billing other state departments for or constitutional officers for personnel that are not employed by the governor. So it seems very specific to this one particular action. Can you give examples of that and what the reason that was? You know, things are that way currently, and finally, what the governor's office response was to this, or input was for this bill.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Birch. So what was uncovered was there's transfers before the budget comes through. So there were three transfers in August. As you know, the budget starts in July, and then as soon as that budget was in, there was transfers from health and welfare monies into the governor's budget, IDOC, and Department of Insurance. While they weren't huge amounts, it's definitely not within, we budget for each agency separately. So to just transfer that, it kind of confuses, and it's less transparent when we don't, we want to know what you need for your budget, and we don't want it to be covered up by other agencies kind of transferring money. And so that's what this bill will do. It'll keep it within their budget, and then we'll know if the governor needs more, then we don't want to transfer that. We want it within his budget.
Follow up.
Representative Birch.
What was the reasoning for why those transfers were taking place?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Birch. You'd have to ask the governor what his specific reason was. But that being said, we just do not want other agencies' money being transferred over to the governor's budget. Obviously, he didn't have enough money in his budget to cover what he wanted for about $250,000. So maybe we need to bump that budget up. We just want transparency for what we're spending and how we're spending it. When you do transfers like that, it's hard to track, and it's hard for JFAC to track. So we want to just keep it clean, and we want transparency in these budgets.
One last question.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thanks, Chairman. Was the governor's office consulted on this bill?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Birch. He's well aware, I think, of what's going on here.
Well, my question was he consulted specifically on this piece of legislation?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Birch, I did not talk to him specifically. No.
Thank you.
Okay. Committee, we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion on the motion?
Chairman?
Representative Monks.
Maybe I would ask a question.
Go ahead for a question.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Whose responsibility is it constitutionally for budgets?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Monks, it is a legislature. We need to track it. We're only here 3 months, and so we want to make it as clean and clear as possible so we know what's going on and things aren't kind of happening behind the scenes.
All right. We have a motion already.
Can I speak to the motion? I will not be supporting the motion. I'll explain it that while the legislature may have that responsibility, I also think we have a responsibility to be courteous to the other branches of government, especially if we're going to write legislation that affects them. I don't see any problem with consulting with any other branch of government to find out we want to change this about how you do things. Why not talk to them? I just think that we should be a little more cooperative as opposed to combative, which I could see this being viewed as a hostile piece of legislation. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Monks.
Thank you, Chairman. What I find hostile is when budgets are hidden. That is our constitutional responsibility, and when money is moved around hidden from us, I find that hostile. I find that offensive. I think this is very appropriate for us to be looking at exactly where the money is. When we budget money, that's where it's supposed to go. To move it to another budget is not appropriate in any way, shape, fashion, or form.
Thank you. Representative Scott, you can be seated.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I just would want to say, shuffling money around is not appropriate. We need to have accountability, and that's our job, to kind of keep an eye on the budget, see what's going on. It's hard enough just doing it in 3 months. So we just want it to be clear and transparent.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Scott. You may be seated. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Representative Birch.
What's inappropriate is not even bothering to find out why. Okay, if the implication is there's something nefarious going on. It's a simple question. Why is that happening? I don't know. No effort was made to find out. So, yeah, I mean, if something inappropriate is going on, fine, but without even bothering to ask and just writing legislation, I think is really disrespectful.
Committee, any further discussion?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Representative Scott. I think we'll just
No comment on
finish.
that?
We'll just finish discussing the
Okay.
motion in the committee. Representative Monks.
Thank you, Chairman. The sponsor said she had not talked to the governor's office. That doesn't mean that nobody talked to the governor's office. That's a big assumption there. And we can play this game all day long, Representative Birch.
Well, who did?
Hold on,
Mr. Chairman.
hold on. Through the chair. Representative Birch.
Okay, so then who did speak to the governor's office about this piece of legislation?
Representative Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just some clarification on this. This actually, his budget did come up just recently within JFAC. Within that, this was fully discussed in depth and in length, kind of showing these transfers. Part of like the good lady had presented that these numbers were actually done before, really at the very beginning of his budget. So he's actually transferring money at the very beginning of his budget. But the other issue that we saw within this was at the end of his budget, when it looked like his budget was going to get overrun, he did an additional transfer that had come in, and it was looked to me, and it looked to other people within that committee of JFAC, then we were trying to figure out and trying to understand that there was no actual transparency within this. This is not something you can actually just go out there and find within a transfer aspect. These were specifically done, and it made it look like there were not nefarious, but this was something that was being done not just 1 year, but it's been being done every single year. So it's not just doing work for an agency. This is actually, it looked like it was actually being done to just as a typical thing to gain additional money within his budget. I think the good lady spoke to it very clear and precise that what we are looking for within JFAC, within the legislative process, from legislators, because we are the ones that control the purse strings, to make sure that the governor asks for what he actually wants within his budget. I think this just helps clean it up. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the motion before us is to introduce RS 32167. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by nay? Do you wish to be recorded?